Hi everyone, welcome back to Chaiwithping. This is Ping, and it's been 3 months since I published my first episode on this channel and as well as in the Mandarin channel. So I just set up a support link that you can find from the episode note. If you like my show and want to support my work, you can choose to there are, I think, three options that you can support: $1, $5, or $10 a month through your credit card. It's on anchor.fm. So, if you like my show and you want to support what I'm doing, so you can just head over there and the link and see the details. And today we have Agi as our guest. I didn't edit a lot of it because I just want to remain authentic. A lot of times that, we were actually thinking with the questions and to recall our experiences as medical interpreters. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started.
Welcome to Chai with Ping. This is Ping Robert, and in this podcast, we will cover a range of different topics from culture, languages, and underrepresented stories. Join me with a cup of chai and listen to these stories.
Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome back to Chai with Ping. Well, I don't know what happened to my mouth because sometimes English just doesn't flow through my mouth. But, being an interpreter, I have a very special guest today. She is actually my medical interpreter coach, and she just taught me so much about medical interpretation, and I just love her personality and as a friend. So that's why I invited her today to come to my show and chat about the interpretation industry and also her experience as an interpreter as well as interpreter trainer. So let's welcome Agi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Agi, and yes, I'm with Colorado Language Connections, and I've been doing interpreting for several years. And yes, I taught Ping and and the rest of interpreters with medical interpreting course, and I truly enjoy it. Thank you so much for the introductions.
Agi, you told me you're from Indonesia, right?
Yes, from Indonesia. Yes.
And when did you come to the U.S.?
So I came to the U.S. It was back in 2004 for college.
What did you study?
I studied marketing.
Ooh, okay. And tell us a little bit about how you get into the interpretation industry.
You know what? That's a very good question. The thing is, I didn't even know that interpretation was a profession. Back in Oklahoma, I helped my community translating, between provider or other public service provider. Public service agency, when they need help, because some students, like, they brought their spouse and their spouse normally don't speak English. So they need help. And then their husband, their spouse, usually take classes, and then, they cannot accompany the wife for medical appointments. So usually when I have time, I help them accompany and I translate. Looking back, and I thought to myself, I could have start charging people because I did a lot of interpreting. I'm kidding about that.
You should.
And then when I moved to Colorado, that's when I, looked for a job, and APDC called me, and, they said, we received your resume. We have this opening. Are you still interested? Of course, when I apply, I also, learn about, what kind of a job it is. So it was, marketing, and then doing some analysis, for a translation department. So I studied a little bit because I want to be good. I want to succeed during interview, and I want to get the job. And I learned so much that translations, interpretations, it was such a huge demand. People need translations. People need like there's like a huge community that actually like need help when it comes to speaking with doctors or with police department, or with other human service agency. And then I just want to clarify the difference between interpretation and translations. I'm sorry, I shouldn't like mix up like between those two, but translations in our terms is for written, and then interpreting is for oral. So I just want to clarify.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that was clear. I think a lot of listeners who don't have any understanding around interpretation or translation will really benefit. And so what kind of people would need interpretation that, for example, when you encounter those people, is it just hospitals and police departments?
Oh, no, I mean it's more than just police department or hospitals, but also like public school. The thing is, public school, like they have parent-teacher conference, where the parents meet with the teacher and then talk about like how the kids are doing at school. And then the thing is, teacher want to explain to the parents, well, this is how your child is doing. And the problem is sometimes it's just like really hard when trying to explain to parents when the parents don't speak the same language. Human services, clinic, etc. I mean, legal, like law firms, they also need interpreting. Religious institutions also need interpreting. So anything that, require interactions with like non-English speaking audience or people, then they need interpreting most likely.
Yeah, and like it's probably a lot of times beyond our imagination, because like if we actually speak the local language, then we might not be using that services. But like I know that a lot of people use interpreters in the court.
Yeah.
And or like advocacy departments, like when they're trying to support victims of anything, like that's also when we come in. So then how has your experience been? Because it's been quite a few years now, right?
Right, yes. I'm just going to be honest. When it comes to interpreting, when my office requested me to interpret, like that means like I go outside and then, to interpret for the patients and doctor. There's several interpreting that I actually like respectfully decline, and that is court. Anything like legal and court, I respectfully decline. So, I mean, outside that, like, for human services, for medical, for public school, for education, for medical, I'm willing to do it. And I can explain to you why. Because when it comes to legal and court, there's so many vocabularies. And we're not talking about like, interpreting from English to Indonesians and vice versa. But also when it comes to interpreting, we also need to understand, well, what does it mean, And then that can compromise the quality of interpreting if the interpreter, we don't even know what that means. So it's always good, to continue learning about like new vocabulary. Sorry, I know that's a little bit off track.
No, that's totally fine. I do understand we do have limited vocabulary, like medical field and court legal fields that are totally different. I wouldn't be comfortable going to the court as well, especially when it's a serious case. Yeah. But have you been to the court?
No,
not yet.
I've never been to the court. I think you have, right? With the victim assistance, my understanding. I might be wrong. Like I thought you have I thought you've been to the court. Oh.
Well, I haven't been to the court, but I worked with the police one time, two times.
For interpreting with the DV
That's
cases.
Right. Yeah. So, is there any special story that happened to you, like you can't forget?
Well, special story related to interpreting. Well, I can tell you one thing. So, in Indonesia, we have, what do you call that? When you have common cold, okay, we use coin and then we dip it into fix or any like minty balm. And then so we dip that coin and then we scrape the back of the person, who is not feeling well. And then the purpose, it's called kerokan. Basically, we scrape that. I mean, we don't scrape, but, kind of like make like the zebra line. I hope that makes sense. And that purpose is to release the toxic air that is trapped into your body.
Yes.
So it's like traditional healing. Now, the thing is, back when I was in Oklahoma, we have situations where the couple did kerokan, like using that coin to scrape like their child because their child was not feeling well.
Yeah.
So they thought, okay, well, we're just going to use that kerokan and hopefully like he will feel better. Anyway, that son, not feeling better. So they end up taking it to the urgent care. The good thing is, I was there. And the thing is, when doctor just, saw like that child's body, because like they take off the clothes and like, what is that? Like the red line, on the back. The bruises on the back. Like, what is that?
Ooh.
Oh, you see what it means?
Yeah.
People who don't understand about our culture or our traditional healing would assume that, that must be some sort of child abuse.
Yeah.
Right? So that is, so that's also part of the interpreter's role as a culture broker. Obviously, that would be like the least, thing, unless when it's necessary, and then it could jeopardize the flow of communications. So that, the doctor look at the parents and then look at the child. What is happening? Without communications, or like the parents kind of have like issue like to explain. It's like, it's the thing that common in Indonesia, like the thing. But, we explain that this is a common traditional healing that we use a lot in Indonesia, and it's supposed to release the toxic air. Without explaining, like, what kind of healing is this, they can call like the social worker and said, I want to call it the Child Protective Service because clearly like the child is being abused by their parents. But that was not the case, right? So that was a very interesting story. But
that is, wow, that's very cool. Yeah, it's like the cultural sense of it. And then how do you decide when you need to intervene?
I think that when there was definitely confusions between provider and then also the parents, when there is some sort of like misunderstanding and then the confused look like between both parties. But that was like back in Oklahoma when I didn't even know there's like a proper way to interpret. But you can see from the facial expressions when like people just look confused, like, well, what are you talking about? Well, what does it mean? Like, huh? What? So, but I also have another experience, but this is, and I don't think this is something that is, confidential, but because this is about my dad. And there's one time that I took my dad to the clinic, and my dad was very proud of his English proficiency because, he owns, restaurant, and his restaurant is popular with foreigners. So that's how like he practiced English. Yeah. So my dad was not feeling well. I took him to the urgent care, and I said to my dad, do you want me to interpret for you? And my dad said, no, you don't need to interpret for me. My English is good, but just come with me. just in case. But you don't have to my English is good, I can understand. So then I said, okay, all right. And then my doctor explained to my dad, blah 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 blah. And then, okay, well, I'm gonna leave you two, I'm gonna have like the nurse. And then my dad looked at me and said, okay, what did the doctor say? And I was like, "Pa, why don't you just ask me to interpret for you when the doctor like trying to explain for your treatment?" And my dad said, it's just, I'm just so embarrassed because I don't want like they think that I'm not smart. See,
Oh, yeah. And that's also kind of a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah. Ah. So in that case, how would you suggest other people to deal with this kind of situation?
In that situations, it's always important to do the pre-sessions, because I accompany my dad. My role at that time wasn't an interpreter. I was a family member, so I didn't do any pre-sessions. But if I had to interpret for patients, I'll make sure that I have my pre-sessions, even in the in the time constraint. I'll make sure that everything you said will be interpreted to provider. So if you don't want to say anything, like don't say it. So whatever the patient said, and I just interpreted, and sometimes like, why are you saying that? Why are you saying that? so they get the idea that everything will be interpreted. I think that sometimes with client or a patient who have never had any interpreter, they feel really weird. And they try to speak in English, but I know that there are a couple of things that they're not sure. So I just interjected. But like I said, it's always important to do the pre-sessions. So
I remember like there was one time when I was interpreting for a couple, and so the wife was because I am from Taiwan, so I have a different accent than from the people from China. So like we kind of distinguish each other pretty well, pretty fast as well. And so this wife then she just kind of suddenly asked in a group conference and said that, "Are you Taiwanese?" in front of a lot of people, but we're having a group conference. So I'm like, it's like even when the pre-session was done, but the client might not take it to the heart. So I just try to be very neutral. I said that, the client is asking the interpreter if she is from Taiwan. And so the interpreter would like to answer yes. And then I went back to the client in Mandarin. So it's just like, and it was a very funny situation because the wife suddenly realized that she should not be asking that question.
Right.
Yeah. and then it's also like, have you ever been in a situation like the family members could be more than one? And everyone has an opinion. How like what kind of situation was that for you?
I have in similar situations. Usually I just use my hands to kind of like navigate. Usually the provider, the one that end up, okay, everyone, please calm down, because what I'm saying, some of the family members, they were, born here, or like they moved here when they were young. So I think that they have like opinion, and, they can communicate, no problem at all. But they're also creating like disruptions. So usually it's the provider who, end up telling people that, okay, everyone, please, take your turn. But if the provider didn't say anything, then I just raise my hand. The interpreter is having a hard time to interpret when everyone is speaking at the same time. Because imagine that, like, people just like giving their opinions. Well, how can I interpret as the interpreter?
Yeah, and they will have like a lot of side conversations, especially. So usually I think it's the first generation, like the parents who need interpreters, but they're kids. were educated here, so they are very fluent in English, and they kind of dominate the whole conversation.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I
Easily.
also had the experiences like the providers will talk directly to the kids instead of the patient themselves. And
Yep.
so that was just awkward because they will be talking on their own, and I'm like, I'm not sure if I should interpret everything, but maybe I should. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any other special incident happened to you?
Um, I mean, other than the traditional healing, like not really. Well, I interpret for the fine needle aspiration at the hospital in Denver. Um, I mean, I know what it is. I know what it is, but I'm just like translating, or sorry, like interpreting for the patient, and the patient asks, "Well, what is that?"
Yeah.
And the provider look at me, "What is?" Well, like you should know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was like really awkward moment, but anyway, provider understood that, I'm an interpreter. My responsibility is to interpret the conversation between the provider and the patients. I'm not here to be like the expert to know all that the medical terms.
Yeah.
But however, it's always good for us an interpreter to continue to develop our knowledge and skills, because that would make the communications, much like the flow, like much better. If we know like the concept, like the terms.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's like it's such a small little world that a lot of people have different ideas about interpreters and all that. But you are so passionate. I think you're so professional, and you're also like just experienced. And later, how did you become a trainer for people like me?
My department has an opening for trainer, and at that time they were looking for for medical interpreting trainer, and then I just apply, and again they look at my resume, they interview me. Why are you interested? And I said, well, I've been interpreting. I learned about the industry. I'm very passionate about it. I think it's very interesting, a very dynamic professions. And I have the teaching background, so I would like to take this opportunity. And so they said, okay, yeah, I mean, we see that you're very interested, and you're interested to take this role. So then they get me the license. So that's how it started. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know all the stuff that you were teaching before becoming a trainer?
Before I became the trainer, I also took the course for Bridging the Gap medical interpreting course. So I already have the foundations. I also, Google research, online for more medical terms, for more about interpreters, ethics, and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it's like when I went to the training, and I was like, what? Because we basically went through the whole systems, like in our bodies, and then I was like, oh, Aki, you're so cool. You know every part of the body, and like the functions, and the most common words of every organ. And I'm like, right now I still go back to check that booklet and all that, because like I don't remember everything when I don't use it every day. Yeah, how did you remember all that?
I think that teaching helped me remember. Like, telling to other people helped me retain the information. I know it sounds so crazy, but for me, if I want to remember something, then I usually try to explain to other people. And sometimes I just explain to my siblings and to my parents, and they would be like, why are you telling this to us? during family conference. And I said, well, because I just learned something new and I would like to remember. But of course, they just roll their eyes, but that's okay. That's okay. It's okay. It helped me to remember. But yeah, so that's how I keep all the information. And the more you do it, like repetitions, makes things a lot easier.
Was there times that you translated wrong things or interpreted wrong things? Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me what happened.
So when I interpreted wrong, so there was that patient who have a large gland on her neck. I can't remember, but I think that I interpreted wrong, and I just realized, oh no. But then I immediately made that corrections. The good thing is I remember immediately that, not remember, sorry. Like, the good thing is I noticed that I just made a wrong translations. I just translated wrong informations. So then I told provider and patients, this is the interpreter speaking, would like to make corrections. And they said, okay, that's fine. As long as you told us immediately, you didn't wait until, I don't know, maybe like 5 days later. So, but things happen, right? Things happen.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes we make mistakes. So
I had an experience with, like, for example, if the family comes and then one of them was like a English native speaker and the other one needs interpretation. And so then when I'm interpreting, and then the native speaker kind of corrected me. And I was, for example, this patient will say, like, I have like kidney stone removed. And then I translate into gallbladder stone removed. And then the native speaker will say, like, well, I would like to correct that because it's not gallbladder stone, it's kidney stone. And I was like, so I was like, how do you feel when there are native speakers or bilingual people around, but they're not doing interpretation?
What do you mean? Like, say it again. What do you mean, like when bilingual speaker but doesn't do?
So for example, the family member came and then they kind of know what's going on, and then they can pick up the keywords like that, and then I become very stressed because they probably have better English than me.
Yeah. I think that my first incident, when someone corrected me, let me take it back. They didn't correct me, but, they said, I think it was, something. I was embarrassed, I think that is a normal feeling, right? It's a normal feeling, but, in the end of the day, I think that we learn from mistake. If we don't learn, I'm just saying that if we don't encounter problem, issues, mistakes, and we won't be able to grow. That's all I'm saying. So now it's, take everything with a grain of salt. We all human, we make a mistake. But the most important is we learn from that mistake, and then we don't go into the same hole.
Yeah, that's a very good mindset, I have to say. Yeah, it's like we keep learning and keep improving.
I'm just saying that it's not just the interpreting, but also in other type of professions. When someone corrected me, especially someone who is not like my supervisor, like, someone is not even in my department, and like, I think you said it wrong, or like, I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. I used to take it like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I am embarrassed. Like, I feel like my world just like closed down. Ooh, but now it's like, oh, okay, I appreciate that you telling me, because if no one told me, then I wouldn't know. So, it's gonna have to look at from the other perspective, that people telling me because they really wanted to help me, not they're trying to like, embarrass me, because I used to get embarrassed. Like I used to get like, oh, damn, like what's wrong with me?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we all mature in that way. What was there any assignments that happened and made you feel great when you left the place?
I mean, my favorite is parent teacher conference. I'm not gonna lie about that.
And why do you like it?
Because I guess when I interpret, like the students happen to be great, and the parents seem so happy. And, when the teacher tried to explain things, and then I interpreted the parents asked questions, they seem happy with each other. So that give me like a good feeling. But yeah. Medical, I don't know. They give me like a good feeling. I think that all appointments give me a good feeling, but when it comes to medical appointments, sometimes the appointments, the health issues, they like kind of make me sad in a way, even though, just like come back for follow up, but for cancer patients, and I, kind of feel really bad, even though, like I feel good because I think that they have successful communications. But, yeah.
Yeah, but the actual sickness isn't.
The actual sickness, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I had one appointment with a patient, and that appointment was actually the medical provider was revealing the test results, and they were trying to tell the patient that they had cancer. And so that was really hard for me. I felt that like it was kind of a trauma, because I was not expecting that kind of heavy news, and then see the patients and medical provider trying to communicate in a way which is hard for the patient to accept the news. And so I was in between, right? I'm trying to be the conduit for their language needs, but like the emotional impact was just so huge.
Yeah, it's hard. It's in interpreting, we are also expected to be like professional, but at the end of the day, we're also human, right? We have the feeling. But yeah, it's a very hard work, because we still have to maintain our professionalism, and we have to tell the news to the patients, like, you have cancer.
I know. Yeah, and at that time, like the patient was not taking it very well. It's like, that's not possible. There must be something that we can do, right? Could it be wrong from the test results? But then it's like the medical provider tried super hard to explain to them, and for me it's just like I felt like both sides were repeating themselves, but they're not getting connected. Has anything happened to you like that?
Not in that particular situation, so I don't have that experience.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What are the common assumptions that people have you as an interpreter?
People assume that interpreting is an easy work, and people assume that why do you need to get paid? All you have to do is just translate. But honestly, interpreting, think about, like, you have a perfect, solid boiled egg. Okay, or like not boiled egg, like a solid egg, okay, round and nice. That is your brain before you interpret. Once you interpret, it becomes scrambled egg. It's a very interpreting is not for everybody. It's not for everyone. And seriously, just like any other occupations, not everyone can be a doctor. Not everyone can be a teacher. And that's something with interpreter. So people assume that just use Google Translate.
Oh,
we don't need interpreter. There is Google Translate. There is the artificial intelligence. Yeah, about that. Because we are talking about the phrases. Even the words itself has several meanings. Even AI, the Google Translate, at least, for, I'm just like looking at for the next, like maybe like 10 years, I think there still need to work on the syntax, the phrases. They still cannot mimic, how people communicate. And I'm sure like technology eventually will catch up, but I'm not saying that with the next 10 years. I might be wrong, but, at this time, people still need human interpreter. So whether it's through phone or like through video remote or like in person, they're not being replaced. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Did anyone ask you to do things in the appointment that you're not supposed to do?
I mean, like, based on my experience, like most appointments, like when provider like just left the room and then they let me with the patients. I think that's something like they probably were not aware, or like they didn't know that we're not supposed to be left alone with the patients. So I mean, they just said, I'll be back, let me get the chart, or like let me get like something, blood works and things like that. Then I usually just like step out.
Oh, okay.
Because I just don't want patients to say something to me, then later I would be like, I don't think I want to hear that information, or something that is very sensitive. I would rather provider or someone from the medical team be present when I interpret.
Yeah. Well, I had patients asking me to take things or ask things for them. So for example, if a patient is in a bed and they want to call a nurse or something, or like get some food or something like that, then it's like they will ask me to do that, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to do that for you. But it's awkward.
I have to tell you a really funny story.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
It didn't happen to me, but one of my dear friend interpreter, so interpret for the patient, and then the patient is elderly, okay, and then I think that she lived by herself. So anyway, and then like she asked the interpreter to take her the King Supers to buy like some grocery. I know.
What?
Yeah, to buy some groceries. And then the interpreter thought, oh, that's probably like part of my job. And then, okay, well, just, collected the mileage and then like, give it to the agency. And after the agency, like, what is this? And then the interpreter said, because I took the patient to King Supers. She needs to get some grocery item. This is my mileage. Like, we do not reimburse mileage.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What are the common things that the patients or the providers usually? Okay, let's focus on the patients. What are the common things that the patients wouldn't know usually, and then they ask interpreters to do?
I mean, in my situations, I mean, usually like patients just ask like where I'm from, but like which part of Indonesia, but they never ask me something that's like really, or something that are like, oh, can you take me to the grocery store? I guess I must be lucky.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for the listeners, we can kind of elaborate a little bit on that. Like, as interpreters, our job is just to provide the language part, language conversion. But other than that, I don't think we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, taking the patient to the bathroom or taking water for patients. Anything
Or
else you
like,
want to add?
or watch for their kids.
I know, right? Yeah, it's like, no, watch my kids for a little bit. I'm just gonna go to do something.
Yeah.
And it's just like, eh. And for me, I'm still kind of new to the industry, so like sometimes I don't really know how to say no, but like I need to learn to say more no's.
Yeah, I mean, that's like another thing, I think that we as an interpreter, we also have to be firm, when we interpret, for provider and patients, especially when they ask us like to do something that is not related to our job, like watch for babies, watch for the kids.
Yeah.
Or like you said, like take the patients to the bathroom. Like that's not our responsibilities. Our responsibility is so provider and patient can have a good communications and they both have like positive outcome.
Yeah. All right. So my last question for you, Agi, is what do you hope to see in the near future for the medical interpreter industry?
I think that what I'm seeing is a lot of clinics are using video remote interpreting. I'm seeing that more demand, especially that, we are in the middle of COVID-19.
Yeah.
So I see that there will be like more requests for video remote, rather than have to in person, come to the clinic. But then like as of now, what we're seeing, at least from the agency that I work for, like we start seeing that, more in-person interpreter like being requested. However, I see that there will be more demand for video remote. So.
And that's something that you're hoping for?
Well, I mean, I think that. Oh wait, I think the question is what we do help for the medical interpreting. I was thinking about the medical. I was thinking about interpreting. But I'm saying is that for medical interpreters to continue learning medical vocabularies, and then be adapt in the technology, make them feel or like have them be prepared, like what's going to happen, because like when the pandemic happened, that's when the clinics like switching to video remote, even for the appointment base interpreting based appointment. So yeah, we just have to adapt with the technology, be alert like what's going on, like what is changing within the interpreting industry, and take trainings if they could, and then and develop like a network, like get to know as people as possible, because interpreter usually work solo, and sometimes when we work solo we can feel isolated. So sometimes like it's always nice to have like the system support, the people that also in the same profession, so like join associations and things like that. But yeah, for the near futures, hopefully more interpreters get their training done, because that is important. Just because like someone that have, major in biology, that doesn't mean that the person knows how to interpret the correct way. And it does make a huge difference. People can just research online and now, okay, I guess that's how we're supposed to do it. But there's a difference between reading online versus actually have the practice. So if, for any bilingual speakers who are interested to become a medical interpreter, I encourage them to get their training done. If they could find a training that allows them to practice on site, because it does make a huge difference, like between online and in person. I guess I'm more into in person training than online. Although the agency that I work for, we offer live webinar, and then some people do like it, but I personally think that when it comes to learning about the foundations of interpreter, it's always good to find training that allows you to practice on site, with other interpreters or other bilingual speakers too. So,
yeah, absolutely. And we will definitely put some information in the episode notes if anyone is interested to become an interpreter. Augie is here in Colorado, so she can definitely provide more information if you want to go for that medical training. And is there anything else that you would like to say before we end this episode, Aggie?
I think that we have covered all the stuff that we discussed. So I think we're good.
Sure, no problem. All right, thank you so much, Aggie, for coming to the show today.
Okay, is it still recording? Or
it is, but yeah, okay.
Okay.
Usually people will say thank you as well.
I'm sorry. You did it. Okay, thank you so much, Ping, for the opportunity. I'm so fortunate that I get the invitations to share about my professions. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Chai with Ping. Let us hear your voices and stories. Please share this episode, like and follow us on Instagram at Chaiwithping. You can also email us at chaiwithping@gmail.com. Till next time.